In case people don't know, I already have a PNGTuber. I use her for my gaming channel that I should really start posting on again, except it might be too much to edit 2 videos in 1 week. Anyways, you might be wondering if I'm going to make a new PNGTuber if you saw the title of this video. Well, no. I decided to do one of my muses, so here we are. I have so many muses, as everyone knows. So the question was, who do I make a PNGTuber for? I could always go for Jihoon or Youngsing since they're basically my mains. Hye and Hyuk are like secondary. But then I decided to torture myself and make a PNGTuber for Moon. I'll throw in a picture of him I drew right now. So, you might be wondering, Mochi, his design is so simple. What do you mean torture? Oh, but it's not any design as you'll see in the speed paint. Now, let me give some context on this. I made this plot for an RP, right? The original plot involved Jihoon being experimented on by the government, and after losing Youngsing on his termination mission, Jihoon wanted revenge, so he had plans to kill every higher up in the government. He was going full on nuclear. Moon himself is just a government agent in case anyone didn't know, but many saw him as a higher up since he seemed favored by them. I had a design for Jihoon in this plot, but then I began thinking, what if Moon was the test subject instead? I came up with an alternate timeline and explanation for how Moon could have ended up being the test subject instead, and then I made this design for him. So that's how this design I'm currently making in the speed paint came to be. But there are so many details because the initial picture I drew this design in was like that. I didn't think I'd draw the design again, so naturally I went crazy. But well, here we are. You may have noticed Moon has white eyelashes where in the picture I showed, he had just the normal eyelashes. I have an explanation for that. He was so stressed to the point where he completely lost pigmentation in his hair. It wasn't an overnight thing. As he was forced into more brutal training by his father, his hair slowly lost color. Now, is this the most realistic explanation? No, not really. But he's a fictional character in this, so sometimes the logic isn't logicking. I will say, looking back on all this, I did end up missing so many details when drawing this PNGTuber of him. So off camera, I did go back in and add the details. I didn't realize until I started editing this, so you'll see the PNG where I'm missing a couple of details while I'm rigging it. The process for making a PNGTuber took a long time because similarly to a live 2D model, you have to split your art into numerous parts. You don't need to split it up as much as an actual live 2D model. With live 2D, pretty much everything has to be split up. I'll take the eyes for example. A very basic split is the top eyelash, the side eyelash, the bottom eyelash, the actual iris, eye whites, the top eyelid skin, and the bottom eyelid skin. Yes, you heard that right. Top and bottom eyelid skin. I'll explain for those who have never touched live 2D and rigged a model in their life. So the reason why you need to split things up into so many parts is because you have to warp these pieces. You want to have a 3D look, and with more moving parts, it's possible. It's so much harder to rig if things were all together. For example, if I had all of the eyelash in one layer and tried to rig it, I'll have a hard time warping the top eyelash down to make a blink. You might be wondering, Mochi, how on earth do you even know all of this? Well folks, I used to do live 2D. No, I was not an expert. My rigs were so scuffed and I did not know what I was doing when splitting up my art. But I'll put one of my more recent live 2D rigs that's slightly better so the uninformed have an idea. Now that I've established all of that, you can guess what the difference is between splitting art for a PNGTuber and splitting art for a live 2D model. You don't have to make as many moving parts. With the PNGTuber, you don't have to worry about warping anything from what I've seen. You just need flat PNGs to move around. So whatever basic part you want to move around, you cut it. Also, you don't necessarily rig facial expressions. You just have a PNG of your expressions you want, such as like a mouth frown or a mouth smile. So the process of drawing art for a PNGTuber is much simpler. While when I made a VTuber model, it took 11 hours and that's honestly for a very basic model. I believe here I took about half of the time. If anyone wants to do VTubing but can't afford a fancy live 2D model and don't have the time or skill to make one of your own, I highly recommend trying to make a PNGTuber. I think it's relatively beginner friendly and all you need is some patience. I'll go more in depth into the rigging process for a PNGTuber when we get to that part of the video. We have a little bit of the speed paint left, so I may as well talk about some of my struggles with drawing the parts real fast. The main thing was surprisingly the bangs. Whenever you have a lot of curves and you want to do something sorta like physics, it's a lot tougher. Not that there were a lot of curves in the bangs, but they were definitely not straight. Now, you can't warp the bangs. You can maybe just rotate it and do a little squish, but that's about it. There's also the fact that with my art style, it's a bit weird. I have the line art for the eyes on top of the bangs if the bangs don't cover most of the eyes. Same with the eyebrows. I may have missed something, but I don't think I was able to do anything about it with the program I was rigging this with. So I had to go in with an airbrush eraser to erase the ends of the bangs. Yes, that was hard for me. I didn't want to erase too much, just enough. But that's like one small thing. Anyways, that's enough yapping for this section though. And here is how the PNGTuber is looking. Like I said, I added these details such as the black streak in his hair and the burn mark on his neck off camera after realizing I forgot them. Now, let's move on to the rigging part of this. The program I'm using to rig my PNGTuber is PNGTuber Plus. Unlike Live2D, it's free to download and you can search it up. Part of the reason why I stopped doing Live2D was because it wasn't free. My trial expired and I just felt like the free version was too restricting for me. I always liked doing a lot. So of course, I just stopped. Maybe I'll come back to it one day. But as for PNGTuber Plus, I'll explain what I did. So, you want to export all of your PNGTubers parts, obviously. But what I'm about to say is very important. Do not crop your exported PNGs. Otherwise, you have to go through the trouble of moving the parts to the actual location. By default, when you import a PNG part into PNGTuber Plus, the image is centered. So if you leave things uncropped, the parts will automatically go to the right place as you see with me importing the parts. You'll see me importing them in a certain order. Technically, you don't have to do that. You will be able to reorder your layers in PNGTuber Plus by pressing Q to bring back and E to bring forward. I just liked things to look okay, so I tried to import it in order. I ended up having to rearrange everything later anyways though, so maybe there was no point. The rigging process in PNGTuber Plus is much simpler than you think. If you want a basic bare bones model, you just set which PNG is the opened eyes, which is the closed, and then for the mouth, same deal. Of course, if you want to go fancy, you'll have a couple of parts that are rotated when your model bounces. The model will bounce if you set it to do so. It usually bounces a bit if you talk. I selected an additional setting to make it bounce when it's switching between costumes. Think of the costumes like toggles in a Live2D model. You can make certain parts appear or disappear. Also have certain expressions. I did want to test the bounce so I can see physics, so I swapped through my costumes a lot. I should have said this earlier, but please don't take this video as a tutorial on how to do any of this. I'm not an expert, and there are people who can explain this better than I can. I'm sort of just saying what I know and giving advice where I can, but take my words with a grain of salt. Anyways, I should talk about the rotation and physics in this. Rotation is exactly what you think it is. You can make a part spin around, but before you mess around with rotation, you need to adjust the rotation point. By default, the rotation point is going to be centered. You're able to move it by pressing O and then using the WASD keys. I had completely forgotten how to do all of that by this point, so I was struggling. At least I got it figured out though. Once you get the point to where you want it, you can adjust the rotational drag to either make it rotate clockwise or counterclockwise. Don't ask me if negative or positive is either one of those two because I couldn't tell you. I just did what I thought looked decent. I set my rotational drag values low because a little goes a long way. I don't need it to rotate like crazy, but it just needed to do enough to look like it had life, which I think was okay. I added a tiny bit of squishing and stretching with a few parts because I thought it added personality for real. No idea if it actually did anything, but we'll see when I do the showcase. So something I had to do in PNGTuber Plus is linking parts. It's what you think. Link parts so if you adjust the movement of the parent part, the child parts move together. This is helpful for things such as making a pseudo breathing animation or having the back claws move together. I did end up linking very late, so things were interesting. Also, linking in PNGTuber Plus is hell because you have to actually click on the parent part you want it linked to, and if you have a lot of layers, you may accidentally click on the wrong one. That happened to me. So I made a cursed costume where I hid everything except what I needed. I kept selecting the mouth sprite sheet. I didn't mention the mouth sprite sheet, but you can do animation in PNGTuber Plus. You'll have to do a sprite sheet. Essentially, you save all of your animation frames and then search online for a sprite sheet maker, then make a horizontal sprite sheet. When you go in PNGTuber Plus and import the sprite sheet, change the sprite frames into the amount of frames you have, and boom. I could have done this animation for more parts, but I was lazy. I only did it with the mouth. I went off on a tangent there. This is exactly why I say not to take this video as a tutorial. But anyways, I mentioned pseudo breathing animation. It's nothing hard. You sort of select the basic torso and have it move up and down by adjusting the Y frequency and amplitude. I had to mess around with it a bit and I think it looks scuffed, but we deal with it. So something else you have in PNGTuber Plus is drag. It sort of makes the parts lag behind when you move. I think it's nice for certain elements. I'm not good at explaining what on earth is going on here, but yeah. A lot of my rigging process here was trial and error. I spent about an hour rigging this, which compared to rigging a live 2D model is so much shorter. For my live 2D models I made like maybe 2-ish years ago, I spent 30 hours rigging if I looked at all of the footage I have from that time. And by the way, if you scrolled far enough down in my channel, yes, you will find my live 2D era. Let's just ignore how I had no idea how to anatomy back then, because holy hell, why are the heads so small compared to their bodies? I think maybe it was because I got paranoid about making bobblehead looking characters, but guys, a small head on a big body looks equally as goofy. Yes, I'm absolutely roasting myself. If someone insane actually decides to search up those older videos, I'll have to warn you guys for the terrible editing and microphone quality. I was running on a scuffed webcam microphone back then. I still don't know how to edit good, and what I do is very minimal nowadays because I do a silly thing called touching grass and having a life, so yeah. This is why I have so much respect for editors. Okay, but that's enough nonsense rambling. I think I don't have much else to say about the rigging process, so how about I move on to the showcase? And no, it won't be anything fancy because this is me we're talking about. I forgot I had my microphone muted in this, so here's just a voiceover. I said that I had 3 toggles for this. The default as we see here, the angry, and then just the happy toggle, which to see Moon smile is cursed. Anyways, that's about it for the video, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully I'll see everyone in the next one.